Could have been the whiskey, could have been the gin, could have been the six-pack carry-out. I don't know, Tom, but look at the state I'm in. Where are you keeping my good man?
Jesus Christ, I genuinely thought I'll be able to sing along to whatever Jerry's singing here. And I'm like, I was expecting something way sadder, like what made Milwaukee famous.
No, although that is it's an Irish band. Anybody out there, give you 5 seconds to guess what it is. 4, 3, 2, 1. Leave it in the comments. It's the Irish Rovers.
Well, that sounds like something a Republican bar on the border would fucking book.
The Irish Rovers were an Irish band that's some fucking how, Tom, had a TV show on ITV in the mid to late 80s. That was the big hit. Carry out, I don't know, look at the state I'm in. My head is like a football. I think I'm gonna die. But tell me, oh my, wasn't that a party? It's a drinking song, Tom, and it sits with our episode very well today because today is all about drinking.
It had to happen, especially given the fact that we had a segment in a previous seasons called, the drunkest I've ever been. I mean, it had to happen. Because again,
had to happen.
Again, it was born out of literally we hit and stop on the record and just talking about the various alcohols there are around the world, the history and the chat of alcohol. And Jerry went, let's do a fucking episode.
That's an episode
on the history of hooch.
And when we dove into it, Tom, I mean, the question we asked ourselves is, what is poitín elsewhere?
Yeah.
If we have poitín, what have they got? And we've got a whole episode about it here, Tom, but I got to tell you, rest assured of all the alcohols we're about to name right now, I can tell you one thing. They all taste more or less the same, and they all taste like piss.
Stuff really shouldn't hurt you as you're trying to consume it. Shouldn't really. I mean, you'll have a Vindaloo or, well, I don't know if I've ever had a Vindaloo, but you'll have some hot, spicy wings, try and do the hard man stuff. But really, nobody's enjoying it. No. But there's a means to an end when it comes to alcohol, Jared. There's Absolutely. A means to an end.
And indeed, a bravado. Give me the hardest thing you have on the shelf.
Oh, yeah. We all dream of being that cowboy. You know what I mean? Just chewing on a piece of tobacco. Just he slops down a drink, and you go, I'll take the bottle. And
we've all seen the scene in the movies. I believe it might have actually been in Back to the Future 3 when you order a shot of whiskey at the bar and a little bit spills on the bar and the varnish bubbles off the bar. Tom, not that exaggerated, I learned in my research. Not all that exaggerated whatsoever. But yes, everybody, our episode this week is about moonshines around the world, illicit drinks, and the manufacture thereof, with a couple of surprises thrown in at the end for how you can get some alcohol into your system without paying any revenue to the taxman whatsoever.
I mean, there's a lot of pluses in what you just said just there. I mean, from the outset, if somebody was just looking in and you wrote that down for them, that reads pretty good, Jer. That reads pretty good.
It absolutely does. And you know what, Tom? Let's get into it. Okay, let's start off. Let's kick off. Welcome everybody to the Tom and Jerry Show. I'm Jerry, that's Tom, and I hope we've been enjoying season 6 where we've been doing these flights of fancies that we've been doing. And like I say, shall we kick off this week's episode, Tom?
Absolutely. And I would, just before we do, just want to say tip of the cap, sound as a pound. Thank you all very, very much, because people have been unbelievably responsive through this one. We've gotten a couple that had nearly shifted here. They'd nearly shifted here, Jer, and I tell you, tip of the old cap to the whole lot. Thank you very much. That being said, as Jerry said, let's strap on our drinking boots and leap into the puddle of Ishkabaha.
What are you drinking, my good man? And when I say that, I literally mean, what are you drinking? Anytime you order yourself a shot at the bar or pour yourself a wee nightcap at the house, what is it that you are drinking? We call it alcohol, but Tom, there's several different types, and some of them, buddy, you don't want to fuck around with.
Right.
There are 3 main types of alcohol, Tom, and some research I've done has said there's 6 types of alcohol, but then the other 3 just seem to be variations on the first 3. So I'm sticking with 3 here. Yeah. First up, you have a chemical called ethanol. Ethanol, Tom, is what we drink. It's what you and I drink and get drunk on. From baby sham to brandy, if it has gotten you tipsy in your life, then 99 times out of 100, it contains ethanol.
Which is kind of worrying when you think about it, because when you say ethanol to me, I don't hear alcohol, I hear anti-knock. Have you ever heard anti-knock? Think about the two words that got smashed together there. What do you think it does? It stops
it
an
takes
old
the,
engine
from knocking around the place. Yeah.
Yeah. It
My old man, when he doesn't call it a knocking in an engine, Tom, I had to think there. He calls it a pinking in an engine.
A pinking.
Yeah, there's a pinking. That engine's pinking.
That's a much nicer word. I mean, you could drive a few 100,000 miles on a yoke pinking. A yoke knocking, you're fucked. You know what I mean?
Well, not if you throw a drop of ethanol into it. Ethanol, that's it, Tom. Your dad took you out at 17 for your first pint of ethanol. You and your good lady sat around the fire at Christmas, sharing a little dram of ethanol. It's the drinking alcohol, Tom. And I'm not going to sit here and say that that's the only alcohol you've ever drank in your life. We're going to get into it as we rock and roll. But ethanol is what you would, by and large, be buying in an off license.
Okay, well, we need some enlightenment in here because already I'm thinking automotive supplies, mixed garage has a lot of alcohol, if that's what you're telling me. Because my car is full of booze right now.
If you're talking about that, Tom, then you are perhaps talking about methanol. Ooh. That M goes a long way, buddy. Methanol is another type of alcohol, usually derived synthetically from natural gases, although it can crop up in the fermentation process. But it's usually derived synthetically from natural gases and used in everything from the production of plastics to making antifreeze, very possibly anti-knock. It can make fuels. It can make fucking every goddamn thing.
It's the Swiss Army knives of the Thal family, isn't it? There's a shit ton of things it can do. It turns up in a few things. Or I know a man that accidentally drank it, and for about a month, his voice was completely different. He didn't sound. Yeah. He didn't sound. It sounded like he was talking underwater through a phone.
Well, we're going to get into it. What methanol will fuck you up. I mean, that was. I don't know if it's changed, but I remember methylated spirits back in the day. They probably took methylated spirits off the market, or at least seriously prohibited the sale of it, because there was a notion that you could drink methylated spirits as handily as you could drink a bottle of whiskey. Not the case, Tom, and the ruin of many a poor man. And then the last one you have is isopropanol alcohol. Now, that's not the stuff that killed Michael Jackson, all right? That was a different stuff.
All right.
Was his milk for putting him to bed. Isopropanol alcohol, Tom, is rubbing alcohol. You can use it to make surgical spirits. It's what we've been putting on our hands to kill germs for the last 2 years.
Okay. Oh, now I know. Okay, now I know. Yes, this is starting to make sense. It dries up very, very quickly. It has an evaporation point.
It dries up
very,
really
very low.
It's primarily used as a disinfectant. I got a drum of it right here, Tom. Look at that. I got a fucking drum of isopropanol alcohol right here. Okay.
Party of Jerry's.
Absolutely anything. You can use it instead of white spirits. You can, if you got a sticker on something, if your kids have put stickers on something and it leaves that sticky residue behind it, clean it off. It's a little bit too rough to take nail polish off your hands, but it absolutely would. Isopropanol alcohol, a wide range of cleaning purposes, but do not fucking drink it.
I used to do a bit years ago about the first people that discovered stuff. And who were the first fellas that discovered aftershave? Because if I'm not mistaken, because I couldn't understand why aftershave. First of all, it's the worst name ever, like the laziest naming of a product of all time. You just named it the situation it's in, not actually giving it a name. But it burns your face after you've just shaven. But it's like, well, it'll burn your face for now, but it'll take the heat away. It's like, well, I was doing okay with the fucking heat, and now you just want to set fire to my face. But I'm pretty sure it's isopropyl.
Yeah. Aftershave has isopropyl alcohol. Basically, isopropyl alcohol, if you can put it on your skin, it's isopropyl alcohol. Okay. You're not going to be rubbing methanol on yourself. Yes. And you shouldn't be rubbing ethanol on yourself unless you're a cowboy that's been hit with an arrow in the middle of a desert and you need to pour something on it. But yeah, if you in the last couple of years, Tom, if you've been using hand sanitizer and you rub your hands and you give it a sniff and you're like, oh, there's a bang of alcohol off that, you're absolutely right. It is alcohol, but it's not the same alcohol that you drink.
Didn't a small distillery here in Ireland, when of course the prices went through the fucking roof for hand sanitizer, because capitalism and all the rest of it, a small distillery here in Ireland started producing hand sanitizer because they went, we have the facility, lads. We got started selling it at cut price rate to undercut all the big boys.
You scribble out an M, you write an E, you've got ethanol, or not, as the case may be. Okay, so our talks tonight, Tom, on this podcast will revolve mainly around ethanol, but I did wanted to make mention of methanol and isopropanol because down the line they come sneaking back into the occasion right when you don't want them to, particularly when you're making drink out the back of the house.
Right.
Let's kick off, buddy. Let's make some ethanol, okay?
Yep.
How do we? Let's get some ethanol up in here, okay? So the majority of drinkable alcohol is made by a process called fermentation, Tom. That's where yeast is added to an ingredient and the sugars in that ingredient break down over time and leaves your alcohol. So, you know, there's a whole pile of homebrewers at home yelling at this podcast right now going like, actually, there's 10 more steps that you've left out here. But as we've always said, Tom, this is a kickoff podcast, not a learning podcast. So fruits such as grapes will produce wine and apples will produce ciders and then malted barley will produce beer and so on. Everything makes something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But, Tom, if you want a little bit more kick in your drink, if you want to take that beer and make it into a whiskey, again, home brewers, we hear you shouting at us. What you do is you take the fermented liquid and you distill it to create stronger drinks, okay? The distillation process is very simple, Tom. You just apply the science. Ethanol boils at a lower temperature than water. So if you have a fermented liquid and you place heat under it, the first steam that rises up will be mostly ethanol, and the water will follow later. But if you just stop your heat after you've extracted your ethanol, boom, you've now got a very, very strong spirit for drinking right there. You collect your evaporated alcohol and cool it in what's known as a still. And, you know, there are fancy stills and there are not fancy stills, but if you've ever seen like a picture of a whiskey brewery that have those big copper drums with the little tits out the top of them and go into a pipe, it's for all intents and purposes a still.
Yeah.
You measure the amount of ethanol in this liquid and present it as a percentage of the overall thing. Okay, so basically out of every 100 milliliters, how many milliliters of this is ethanol?
Oh.
And that is how you give yourself the ABV of that liquid, Tom. The alcohol by volume, the measure of how fucked up you're going to get as printed on the label of every alcoholic beverage available on the market.
Aha. I mean,
That's
I
where
always
you get that number. The fuck you up number.
I mean, you know what? It's like a thing you look at all the time and you don't really log it. You're like, well, that's a 6% beer. I'll be having 2 of them instead of 6 of the other types.
Exactly.
And now, I mean, that makes perfect sense as per. So really, if I'm having a 6% beer, 94% of it is just really the conduit of getting the good shit into me, isn't it?
Of getting the 6% into you. And this is where the sort of bravado nature of the drink comes in, Tom, where you're like, oh, you want to drink this, it's a 15% beer, you know, like it's higher, therefore it's going to fuck you. Like basically all it is, and we can be connoisseurs all we want, but the higher the number is, the more it's going to fuck you up. And to some people that means a lot, Tom. Other people want to get a 4% beer and sip them all day Stephen's Day without getting too drunk.
Go back to season possibly 4 or 5 there to pick up what Gerry was talking about there.
And I want to make mention here as well, that's the ABV. There's also the proof of the alcohol.
Yes.
Which you will hear that it's 150 proof. Or it's 80 proof alcohol. Tom, the ABV and the proof are basically the same, except it's represented in a different figure. You take the ABV of the liquid and you multiply it by 2, and that's the proof. So if you have a bottle of vodka like Smirnoff and it's 42% ABV, well, that's 84 proof alcohol.
All right.
Would you like to know why this is done, Tom?
Please, yeah, because I've watched enough of these programs and nobody's fully broken it down. They either say one or t'other. It's like listening to watching British shows and they talk about how many miles out there, and then you watch like an army show and they're talking about clicks. And I'm okay with all of it, but I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do the conversion rate here.
If you'd like to know why they represent it as ABV and proof, Tom, that makes 2 of us, because I have no fucking idea why they do that. It's like they had a perfectly handy ABV sitting there, and then they were like, hey, let's double it. So let's make this 84 proof alcohol. No, it's the same thing. You're not getting any more fucked up. But with that being said, Tom, as we'll see down the way, you want to be very careful that if you're drinking proof and someone hands you ABV, it's not the fucking same thing.
Yes.
So in a clinch, if you're like, hey, I used to drink 80 proof alcohol on my granddad's farm and I'm grand, and someone goes, okay, have a drink of this, and you look at the bottle and it's 80 ABV, and you think, yeah, no bother, I used to drink 80 proof all the time. It's like milk to me. Wrong.
Double
Wrong.
strength.
double the strength, problems ahead.
I have to ask you,
What do you got?
you've been around the world and we've talked about this before, but we've normally considered how much we've drank. Have you ever drank something that was absolute fucking rocket fuel, strength-wise?
Well, as we said in my the drunkest I've ever been, back the way, I have drank poitín, which we're about to get into. That fuck knows what the ABV of it would be, but it was knock you in the ground strong.
I would advise anybody, if they are feeling that bravado, I think Gerry was on about, there's a whole bar, and you can get some of their beers here in Ireland. It's called Delirium, is the name of it.
Oh, I've drank that in the clay bottle.
In the clay, but well, there's a bar called Delirium in where it's born out of, where the Pink Elephant is their label. It's in Brussels, and they have a telephone book of beers and cocktails, like astronomical amount. And the strongest beer they had at the time had just lost the world championship to, of course, a Russian beer. A beer, I'm saying now, Ger. It was 42% beer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beyond disgusting.
There's ways and means of doing that you can, and I'm going to get into a little bit more of the science down the way, but you can ferment a 42% liquid. Very hard, very tricky. You need to know what you're doing. It's all about balances and aging and all this kind of thing. But as I'm going to get into a little bit further down the way, there's as high as alcohol can go.
Okay.
So with that very, very rudimentary guide to the production of drinkable alcohol, Tom, let's take a little trip around the world and see what is on offer when it comes to under-the-table, legally dubious tipples, my friend. Because you know every country's got them.
Yep.
But we're going to start at home with a spirit that both of us are very familiar with, poitín.
Lovely.
Poitín is derived from the Irish word potta, which means a pot, because it was made in a fucking pot. We don't overthink these things, Tom.
I mean, I would be raging if it was anything more intricate than pot.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, it could just as handy be called stilline because it's distilled with a still, you know? But regardless of which, poitín is not a new invention. In fact, it dates back to the 6th century, Tom. And, you know, depending on which historian you listen to about when poitín was made and St. Patrick was in the country, it's very possible that we might have had a crossover where the two of them were at the go at the same time. That's how far back it goes.
I love the idea that St. Patrick might be to blame. Like, we were actually, you know, flying it as a country with just a zero crack, and then St. Patrick got brought over by Niall of the Nine Sausages. But he's like a lush Welsh bloke. Like, he's like, so I landed in Ireland, and, you know, there was absolutely zero crack here at all. They were just quite, you know, if anything, they were just a bit smart and boring, really. I saw them going places. They were really going to go places. There was inventions. I mean, AI would have been on for years, but I just thought, you know what? I've only got these sheep to watch out in Mayo, so I don't aim to introduce some alcohol. Lo and behold, they took to it like ducks to water. It was fantastic. I'm the patron saint of the place now. I don't even believe in Christianity. I don't know why. I'm not even fully sure. Their fable would say he's Welsh. I'm guessing he didn't have that accent. He was apparently a well-to-do Welsh person, you know. So I just like doing the Welsh accent.
Like, he's a Welsh guy, and he also, by the sounds of that, he also would referee a rugby game every now and then.
You know where I picked it up, all right? Yeah, I'm absolutely doing Nigel Owens. Yeah.
Well, regardless of which, let's make some poitín, Tom. Poitín is made from malted barley. Okay, so the difference between barley and malted barley. Again, please don't scream at me at this. We're giving you Cliff's notes on these things. But basically, if you take barley and soak it for 8 hours until it begins to germinate.
Right.
And as that process begins, you stop that and you dry it for 8 hours.
Okay.
And then you soak it again. And then you dry it again. Then basically that prepares the starches in the grain for fermentation. And that's what you call malted barley.
I actually thought there were two different seeds. I don't, you know, I've never lived in a tillage part of the country. I thought there were just two different seeds. Right.
And hey, how wrong is Gerry? Let us know in the comments. But basically, poitín can also be made from potatoes, and I would have said coming into this, Tom, that was what it was. You got potatoes, you make poitín, and, you know, it couldn't get more Irish if it wasn't a fucking alcohol made from potatoes. To be honest, Tom, you can make poitín from whatever the fuck you have lying around the place. If it ferments, you can make it. And if you can make it in a pot, in a still, then somebody probably called it poitín.
I had no idea that they even went as fancy as using malted barley. I literally thought it was only ever made with potatoes, because I figured that's all the Irish had at the time. Do you know what I mean? You needs must and all the rest of it. You use what's around you. Like you said, you could pretty much use it with anything, I'd imagine, if you can extract sugars out of it and whatnot.
Exactly. I mean, like, you can, there are stories of people making poitín from milk and poitín from tree bark, Tom. Basically, if you've got it fucking lying around the place, I personally have had plum poitín. It's
Have you?
red in color. Yeah.
What part of the country did you have that in?
Well, boom.
I think I got a bottle of that shit from a one-eyed digger driver. It was pink, and I thought it was fucking red diesel he was giving me, the mad bastard.
I mean,
And he was from up your neck of the woods.
There may have been a drop of it in it, Tom.
This guy, absolutely. This guy had one eye, and let's just say he'd done a little time at Her Majesty's.
At Her Majesty's convenience.
Convenience, I should say. Yeah.
Anyway, not to jump ahead, if you're drinking milk alcohol, Tom, then it's very possible that you're in Mongolia, where it's very, very common. It's their tipple of choice.
Yes.
Yeah. They call it kumis. Kumis. They drink. Yes,
right.
It's basically, it's milk alcohol, but like it's for all intents and purposes, milk poitín. And you can also get tree bark alcohol. Unfortunately, tree bark alcohol is also known for containing lethal amounts of methanol rather than the easily digestible ethanol.
I thought you were going to say beetles. I just thought, my head, if you're going peeling off some bark, there's definitely going to be a pile of beetles inside this. Okay, so it has methanol. Shit.
There's a worm in tequila, Tom. We work around these things, but it's a lot more about the... It's a lot more to do with the ethanol that we have to worry about. But yeah, in short, Tom, like human beings left alone will find a way to make alcohol. Like if you leave humans on a fucking desert island, they'll find a way to make alcohol out of pineapples before they attempt a raft.
The barriers that they have to get through and invented in so many different countries that they weren't. There wasn't like Ireland was on the Silk Road. You know what I mean? Back in the day, like,
no,
we just figured it out of our own accord. As you said, I think it's genetically driven into us, which, as you can, I would say, in some societies and some races around the world, because they haven't been drinking it for 1,000 years or more, like we have and whatnot, their bodies can't actually break it down as well, and they end up, becoming addicted to it as a result. Somebody, indigenous tribes and stuff like that. It just goes to show that almost now, no doubt, they've probably found something else class, like the inner Amazonians found ayahuasca, which apparently is the job when you cross these two plants together. Again, another chemical balance that they had to find. I don't know if they found booze, but I think you said, we're predetermined, we're pre-designed to try and fuck ourselves up.
Well, it always staggers me, Tom. It wasn't like, an Irish farmer in the year 500 was walking through the kitchen carrying a tray of beetroot, tripped, dropped them into a boiling pot of potatoes, and that made drink.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. There's something driven, like the hunger.
It took studying to fucking do what they did.
Like these people, everybody was hungry at the time, Ger, and they still found the time to go, I know we're hungry as shit. We haven't got anything, and pretty much, we've had to eat, my brother. But look, I think we should definitely try and party it up. I'm just saying, I think we all need a loosener, guys. I don't even know what a loosener is, but I definitely think we could do with a loosener. You want to spend the weekend trying to make some fucking sauce? Anybody want to, what have we got? Potatoes. Well, that's a start.
Let's do it. And Tom, hey, you know what? There you go. In the year 600, give or take, Ireland was able to make poitín, apparently. So flash forward 1,000 years to the 1600s. We were incredibly good at it. The Irish countryside was thick with skilled poitín makers, and everybody was having a fucking wonderful time with delicious, well-made poitín. But of course, Tom, at this stage, there was one shower who weren't so happy about it. Can you guess who they were, Tom?
Was it the Mexicans?
It wasn't the Mexicans, Tom.
Go on.
It was the fucking English.
Of course, the English of the time, Ger. We've got a lot of sound English listeners at the moment. You know what I mean? The English of the time were a shower of bastards with no time for the Irish whatsoever. And what we were doing was trying to have the crack.
And Tom, they didn't mind us having the crack. As far as they were concerned, hey, Paddy, get as drunk as you fucking want. What their problem was that the Irish people were getting drunk on an alcohol that was homemade and not passing through any sort of taxation system, meaning that they weren't making a bean from it. The English who ruled Ireland at the time decided that, you know what, we can't impose a tax on every still across the country. There are thousands upon thousands of tiny farms around the place that are making this liquid. So, hey, here's what we'll do. We'll just outlaw the whole fucking thing.
A story as old as time. You know, when they
Tale
talk
as
about
old
it.
as time.
Beauty and the Beast over here.
Song as sweet as no wine.
Come on, I had to literally sing that for 3 weeks on the trot. Granted, I was very well paid, but come on,
Oh,
Jack.
yes, indeed.
I can't have that in my head at
You
this time
can't
of year.
have that here.
No, I can't have.
But yeah, I mean, like, Tom, we're not an anti-British podcast, but on occasion, they don't do themselves any fucking favors.
They fucking don't. But you know what? They do it to their own crowd too. This was the fucking wig wearing, powder fucking wigged wankers. You know what I mean?
Yes.
With a mole and fucking powdered faces going around in fucking pantaloons and whatnot. I might add fucking owners of the East India Company who were fucking pumping opium into the and cannabis. Like Queen Vicky she was into the sticky icky, something serious. But heaven forbid, Paddy would. Like heaven forbid, fucking Paddy would have a good old fucking time. I mean, I get it. It could have been done. Like that would have been their opportunity to set up their own fucking bars at that point. That would have been their opportunity to set up their own bars, work with them. Not try and outlaw, because you know yourself, and I'm sure we'll get into it. You outlaw an illicit fucking thing, you're asking for trouble.
Well, not in this instance, Tom, because after the English outlawed alcohol, homemade alcohol in Ireland in the 17th century, the Irish simply never drank again.
Good night, and thank you, everybody. That is the end of the podcast.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. No, of course that didn't fucking happen. Like we're going to see later on with Prohibition, spoiler alert, all this did was drive the industry underground at the cost of any sort of standards or regulations. See, people still wanted to drink poitín, which meant there had to be people to make it. And while many poitín makers were skilled tradesmen who knew how to make good quality, safe poitín, many were unfamiliar with the processes that had been handed down through generations and brewed dangerously high-volume brews that in some instances contained lethal doses of methanol. Once you make it illegal, Tom, everybody gives it a fucking go. And you take it out of the hands of the people that know what they're fucking doing, and everybody's just like, yeah, I know your grandfather taught you how to do it, but I'm going to give it a go over here.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It was like back in the good old days when Coke had cocaine in it. It was pure good shit straight out of a plant. You're basically, fucking ingesting a fucking pretty cool plant. Then all of a sudden they start cutting it with all sorts of shit, soaking it in fucking diesel to try and get once you drive it underground, as you said, all fucking regulations, it gets Wild West stuff. And that's exactly what happened in this fucking instance. It all went Wild West. No doubt there was lads' fucking heads nearly blown up, hair stand on top of their fucking head. I can only imagine what some of that shit tasted like.
Well, I mean, like, you look at the process. Okay, I get it. Smush up a bunch of potatoes, make a mash, let it ferment with yeast, get that out of it, throw it into a still, boil it up, and the first steam that comes through it, that's the stuff you drink, right? Simple. Not the case. There are intricacies, Tom, and this is where it gets very fucking dangerous. In some instances, an ingredient known as pectin, which is a naturally occurring substance, finds itself in the ingredients chains. And it can be as simple as a stalk of the potatoes gets in with it. Pectin has its place in this world, but the problem is that when pectin ferments, it produces methanol, not ethanol. And that's the one, Tom, if you remember back, that's the one that can cause blindness and even death when consumed in any sort of quantity.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It's not, the human body does not have a tolerance for methanol. It's not a case of, I better only have 2 or 3 shots of it this evening, I'm driving. Methanol could very possibly kill you on sight.
You could put your horse in the ditch on methanol, basically. That's what you're telling me. And you know that bottle does not come with like a little sticker on the side of a pregnant woman dancing, which always I found hilarious. Was like, whatever you do, don't be pregnant and dancing, drinking out of this bottle. It had no warning on the label. No idea what was in it. It was like, let's fucking run with your brung, boys. Try it out. See what happens.
Yeah, grip it and rip it.
Grip it and rip it, exactly.
People knew the difference. I mean, we've all known when we've had a bad pint, so to speak.
Yeah.
So skilled poitín makers knew that pectin caused methanol and that you don't fucking drink that. So what they would do is they would counteract this by throwing away the first liquids to come out of the distillation process, because methanol boils at an even lower temperature than ethanol. So that would be the first thing that came out of your tube. But given that there were no college courses to become a poitín maker and literally no regulations on the industry, it really was just a case of buyer beware. Tom, you're getting a pint. You go in at 10 o'clock in the morning for a pint. What do you tell them to do?
Pull off the first one there. please.
Pull off the first one.
Yeah,
because that's good. That's been sitting in the tubes. That's not going to be good. Here's the thing, Tom. If you get a good barman, you don't have to tell him to do that because he'll have done that for you.
There ain't no lads. They don't want to waste shit here. You put a ton of effort in. And also a bloke who shows up who ain't your mate. He's got, whatever currency they have at the time. I don't know, some pressed salt or whatever they had at the time. And maybe I'm going back a bit to the Mesopotamian period or whatever. But, as you said, buyer beware. Who's to say these cowboys had the better stills too? This might have literally been a pot with a lid on it, a pipe. It
really could have been. And I hate to say it, but you had good poitín makers that would have known, hey, look, see the first 5 minutes of liquid that comes out of that? Don't drink that. But the rest of it, your game ball. They got a bad name because of the give it a go lads who were just like, yeah, here, have a drink of this. I mean, here's the thing. It was an industry. You were a farmer who made poitín. You were a poitín guy. So if you blinded your neighbor, then nobody's going back to you,
True. You don't want to be, the blinding guy. As you said, the first 5 minutes, whenever somebody lands on here, you need something to kill your weeds. That first 5 minutes, that bucket over there, that's for you. Hold tight. We got something coming. For you. Yeah.
The one cautionary tale everybody will tell you about poitín, whether you're telling your American cousins or you're telling it yourself, poitín doesn't fuck around, Tom. It's incredibly powerful.
Nope.
Now, as we said earlier, I was going to say a wee bit of science to it. There's a limit to how strong alcohol can get. There is a limit on how much ethanol you can extract during the distillation process. No matter how hard you work, no matter how hard you try, there's just a cap on how much you can get out. It caps out at around about 95 to 96% purity. So this thing that people saying, oh, it's 100% pure alcohol, not the case. You're never going to get that. No matter what distillation process that you're using. Okay, so no, you've never drank 100% pure alcohol in your life. But that's not to say that 96% pure alcohol won't knock your cock on the ground anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But that's just it. So with no regulations, poitín became famed for just how strong it was. It was way stronger than any commercially available spirit. The alcohol that you bought in a shop, Tom, had to legally put on the bottle how much it was. And here's to say, even in more, I know that's back in the 1700s and what have you, Tom, but even in more recent times, in the 1990s and what have you, if poitín was being made in a still at the back of a shed, even in more modern days, probably wasn't a whole lot of lads doing scientific experimentation from batch to batch.
Because you would work for a crowd if that was the case. You're making shit in your shed. Let's be honest.
Yes, I remember there was some sort of a tale about if you poured a little bit of it onto a flat surface like the bottom of a saucepan or some such, and you lit it. You could tell by the color of the flame, roughly speaking, how strong it was going to be.
That one-eyed Monaghan man gave me the exact same story.
You know what? I'm not saying there's no science to it, but it's a poor fucking standard for telling how strong an alcohol is.
At least there's something sciencey about flames. I've seen blokes try to tell me that if you shake it a certain way and count the bubbles or something in it. Have you ever heard this bullshit? You shake it in the clear bottle and you count the bubbles popping at the top, and if they pop really quickly, you need to know bubble movement. You need to be a doctor of bubbleology to understand. Yeah, how about you just measure the fucking level of alcohol in the fucking thing rather?
How about you measure the level of alcohol? But as we said, Tom, this is an unregulated underground industry. Nobody's going to the problem of doing this, so they're going to tell you X, Y, Z. But in truth, the only way to know how strong the poitín you were drinking was to drink it and see how quick it knocked you the fuck out. And this is the problem. This is the problem with anything, Tom. If you've drank poitín in your life and got away with it, then you may think the next poitín you're drinking is the same. And that's the one that cripples you.
Yeah.
Because they ain't all equal, Tom.
Well, it's like petrol stations around the country, Ger. You know it yourself. You're filling a thing with diesel or whatever. You know that there'll be one where you'll get loads out of the tank, and there'll be one where I don't know what they're doing or where they're drilling it out of, but it's sure
something's going on.
Something's going on. It just flies through the tank. Like I talked about it on our previous seasons, where that time I drank poitín and then it resurfaced a day later. There are myths and strange things that go with this stuff.
We were always told the day after you drink poitín, don't drink water, because that would reactivate it in your stomach. Madness, Tom. Drink as much water as you can because your system is poisoned. Flush the shit out of yourself.
Maybe drink it the night before as you're drinking. Maybe take a water with it. but you drink it the next day and I can guarantee it will reactivate if you drink enough of it, which I did. I was too pissed to drive, and it was the middle of the day and I hadn't had a sup of alcohol, only my waddy. That's all I'd had all day. So,
you know, it's like one of these things that you can only learn through experience, like when you're eating really spicy food and people say, don't drink water, drink milk.
That's exactly it. And you drink the water all the same to go, I don't know, water is...
So, flash forward, Tom, to 1997. I was doing my leaving cert, and the Irish government, perhaps out of concerns about what the fuck I was going to do when I got my results, but more so, I would say, out of concerns for an unregulated alcohol industry. And, you know, maybe, Tom, would I dare say that the Irish government wanted a taste of that sweet poitín revenue?
They wanted to wet their beak.
Well, whatever they wanted, they got it, because they legalized the drink for sale by licensed distillers, although it does still remain illegal across the board up the north. In fact, Tom, when it went legal, when it went legit, poitín was granted geographical indicative status by the EU, meaning to say that it can only be called poitín if it was made in Ireland, same as champagne can only come from the Champagne region in France.
Wow. I mean, I love that. I love that you could be culturally appropriating. If I'm making poitín out of spuds in fucking Spain.
You could be making fucking poitín in the Isle of Man and people would be like, no, take that Manx cat shit elsewhere.
Yeah, cancel culture immediately. How dare you? This is our culture. It's our that firewater that we drink that almost kills you every time you drink it, that's ours. Don't you dare try and take that from us.
Yes.
I love that.
I drank Scotch. I drank Scottish poitín one time. No, you fucking didn't, pal. No, you didn't.
I love that it aligns itself with champagne from the Champagne region of France. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
You go to a like there's a sommelier fucking quaffing poitín. Well, here's what it is, Tom. Here's what resulted from that. That you or I could leave here now. What time? So 20 to 9. We could leave here and go to our nearest off license and buy poitín.
Oh.
Safe, legal, regulated, at a strength of, roughly speaking, usually tapping in around about 40 to 50% of an ABV. You can just do it. This is why you can go and buy it. They regulated it, and it's, you know, it's a craft industry, so to speak. You or I could set up a poitín still and register as brewers and make it legit.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of takes the fucking go faster stripes off it, doesn't it?
This is it. The legalization of poitín, Tom, hasn't curbed the illegal distillery industry in the fucking slightest. Nobody wants this namby-pamby, hold-your-hand, store-bought poitín. What they want is the harder, more illicit and, dare we say it, more traditional poitín, rather than some safe supermarket brand.
I mean, it kind of goes with everything too. You know, when they try and make something, you know, like homemade, you know, when things try to be homemade, like they try to make chefs in Cork. We talked about tripe and drisheen, horrendous stuff. Like chefs got in Cork started using like offal. I remember when I was living down there, it was like tripe and drisheen, you know, and with truffle. And you're like, dude, I wouldn't eat this shit regardless, but there's no way the traditionalists are going to want to eat this shit, because they want that rough old shit in a pot being cooked for fucking 14 days. And they want to eat it how Nana made it, you know?
And not for nothing. I mean, like, you know, we can, if we're doing this right, we can distill an alcohol, roughly speaking, to the percentage of alcohol that we want, the ABV that we want. So if we're making store-bought poitín, we're going to need to make something that sells. And not everybody wants to drink 90% ABV alcohol, so you aim for what's on the shelf. What's the ABV of vodka? Round about the 40s? Let's make it around about there. So everybody can have a nice time and nobody's going to blow the hell themselves. But it has to be said, Tom, you know, blowing the hell of yourself is kind of the USP, the unique selling point of poitín to begin with.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, sometimes you just want fucking rocket fuel. Or at least if you never want it, you want the fucking option of it, Jer. And there's something, like when we drank that poitín in Galway that time, it was a fucking lock-in. Yes, we could have gone up to a late bar up the road, technically, or to a nightclub. But we're in a bar that was selling after hours. And you know what? Everybody has a bit of a rogue in them. Everybody has a bit of a rebel in them. No sane person. I know they're doing it nowadays in cities, pulling the claws on cats. Cats are meant to fucking jack fucking
Honestly,
birds and jack fucking
Tom,
mice.
If you're drinking store-bought poitín, it's like getting a helicopter to the top of Everest, you know?
You're that guy. I'm drinking poitín. No, you're not.
Yeah,
no, you're not.
Are you though?
No,
are you really? I think you're drinking potato wine there,
You
pal.
know what I can align this to. I kind of got into a row one time, not a row, but it was like, and I felt bad afterwards. But I ended up accidentally in one of those airsoft shops, and
Right.
I went in for, I was wanted to go in for some gloves where you can remove the index finger for, your trigger finger, because
Gotcha.
and
There was me about to say, yeah, okay, for texting on your phone, yeah. Forgot who I was talking to there for a second. Forgot where we were heading with this one, Tom.
Oh, that's made my evening. That has.
I'm a simple boy, Tom.
No, I mean, it'd be your thumb anyway. Wouldn't it be your thumb if you were texting? But no, I went in and I ended up in the middle, literally the middle of this shop, and I didn't know. Oh, wait, none of this shit is real. Okay, you got some good combat gear, but it's all making up. And they had the coolest looking shit, like straight out of Dune and straight out of, fucking name another fucking game that's really, I don't know, fucking.
Doom will get you.
You get me. You get all these crazy looking yokes that shot plastic pellets at each other.
I mean,
and I was a bit dickish. I kind of went, ha, ha, as I looked at the whole wall and all these grown men, they tattoos and shit because they thought they were tough. They all thought they were in the Hells Angels.
They'll tell you that they're not toy guns.
And oh man, I got into it with a guy. I was like, dude, okay, I'm just gonna tell you right now, I can buy one of those and give it to my child. It was a dick move on my behalf, and I walked away justifying it. In my head, it was justifying, and I told my wife, she went, "That was a bit of a dick move. These guys are living the dream in that place." But for me,
let people have things, Tom.
I know, and I shouldn't. I'm not that guy typically. I accidentally walked into it, but for me, this is what I'm seeing, Jer. You can get anything you want in an off license. What are you doing?
I got to tell you, Tom, if I was drinking poitín, it would feel really, really bad if I was drinking it from a bottle that had a label on it.
That's it. Poitín.
I want to drink it from a Cadet Cola bottle with the label taken off it.
Yeah. And they use methanol to take the label off too, because it was a bit sticky.
or a fucking 3-liter Country Spring lemonade bottle.
Yes, that's what you need. Yeah.
That's what you need. But poitín, ladies and gentlemen, if you want it, you can drink it, kill or cure one way or another. But that's our homegrown moonshine, Tom. Let's move a little further afield, okay?
Yeah.
Let's head over to America, where you've got all manners of homebrew recipes, because homebrew recipes for high-volume alcohols were being brought into America from every country. Every nation that had an immigrant that sailed to America for search of a better life took an ingredient, took a method, took a homebrew with them, and it all ended up in that country. The Irish landed over with their poitín to the Americans. The Italians would bring grappa. Mexicans would say, here's how you make tequila. I mean, you know, because there's no sort of native grown, as far as I can tell. There's no native grown American moonshines, because the Native Americans, best as I can understand, weren't big drinkers at the time, Tom, I stress.
Yes. The poor old devils, they had their trippy shit. You know what I mean? They talk to moon gods
peyote
and ayahuasca and versions of it and whatnot. But old fucking Paddy and the boys landed over with their big old white faces on them, landing in with this gear. It doesn't suit everybody. You have to have at least a few generations of you have to have been poisoning yourself with this shit before you can actually tolerate it.
I mean, here's what it is, Tom, as well. If you have like fucking Paddy comes over on the boat, Giuseppe comes over on the boat, and the two of them are put beside each other in a tenement in New York, Paddy turns to Giuseppe and goes, "What are you brewing there? Grappa, is it? Yeah, what are you brewing there? Poitín, is it? Oh yeah, you know, I think the way we do it back home is if you do this, this, and this." And the Paddy goes, "Oh, the way we do it is if you do this, this, and this." And all of a sudden the two recipes come together and a whole new drink comes out of it. Give that a couple of 100 years and see what you get.
You get punch, don't you?
Well,
do you know?
You get, as the Americans call it, moonshine, okay? But like, here's the thing, Tom, with moonshine's a name that was put on it. We'll get into it now in a little second. But by and large, you ferment a thing and you distill it. It varies very little, you know what I mean? It can be what you're putting into it and what you're using for it, and the barleys and the corns and the mash and all that kind of thing. But by and large, moonshine and poitín wouldn't be all that far away from.
You can use tree bark and milk, so long as you're fucking distilling it. You're off to the races, aren't you?
And if you look at America over hundreds of years with all the immigrants coming from all around the world, I mean, you've just got like this massive house party with everybody bringing spirits to it.
Yeah.
And everything gets mixed and you get all kinds of fucking cocktails coming. Long story short now, Tom, and we're not going to focus too much on Prohibition in this episode because we might save that for another day because we have a couple of stories up our sleeves about that. But long story short, by the late 1800s to the early 1900s, Americans fucking loved to drink. They loved it night, noon, and morning. They loved it to an industry-stopping level. And that caused a group of godbotherers to form a temperance movement called the Anti-Saloon League, which grew to be such a strong political movement that, when combined with the state's involvement with World War I, caused politicians to say, fuck it. Is the alcohol industry worth losing their jobs, or indeed this war over? And that kicked off a period of time when drink was banned almost completely, a 13-year stretch from 1920 to 1933, known as Prohibition.
That's a long stretch for you to be all pretending like it's not really happening. I mean, come on.
I mean, I will say this, Tom. They fucking stuck at it.
Did they what? My great-grandfather was selling it out of his supermarket at the time. Oh, sorry, a vegetable shop. He was selling it on behalf of people. It was as open as could be. And it was fucking great business.
I mean, here's the thing. People say, oh, you can get nothing done. If you get fucking... you get a motivated group of people who are very, very vocal and very, very vocal about where their vote is going to go, you'll find the politicians will change laws pretty fucking quick.
Well, I mean, a bunch of do-gooders and whatnot. I mean, they say they're do-gooders and whatnot. Really, they're coming from a personal point of view. But if you can get enough of them in the
Oh yeah, they're like we want to replace alcohol with God.
Yeah, I mean, have a look at what's going on in Oregon right now. That place has gone to hell in a handbasket with what would be deemed originally a great, nice idea. But power corrupts power, and all of a sudden, people are hungry fuckers when it comes to it. And I guarantee you, somebody at the top of the well-doers that was in the temperance movement, they were saucing it up, Jer. Let's be honest.
You can rest assured of it.
You
can rest assured of it. I mean, like, hey, what can we say, Tom? And again, I threw in the mention there that World War I was kicking off, and the government had a war to fight. They had fucking godbotherers kicking down their door. They're like, you know what? Maybe if more of these people weren't drunk all the time, we could draft a few more of them into the army. So, hey, it's win-win. Fuck it. Yeah, go on. Prohibition. Boom. Stamped on it, and away you go. So the rules of Prohibition, Tom, here's the thing. For the most part, this is one of these fucking funny ones, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You could possess alcohol, and indeed you could consume it. But the manufacture and sale of alcohol was illegal.
Okay.
Basically, you could argue that I had that alcohol from before Prohibition. So it's mine, I legally bought it, and you can't take it away from me because I paid money for it and you can't take it away from me. So, if you had a stash of alcohol at home, the cops couldn't take it from you.
Right. That was weird because I was going, do you just invent this shit? Like, you know what I mean? Can you gift it to somebody? But that makes perfect sense if you had it beforehand. Yeah, okay.
You're drunk. That's not against the law. The person that sold you the alcohol that made you drunk is breaking the law. Like as we said, Tom, if the law was that you could have as much alcohol at home if you bought it before Prohibition, well, all that kicked off was the fucking panic buy of all panic buys, with wealthy families buying off huge amounts of booze before the deadline of Prohibition kicked in some cases filling the cellars of their house with enough drink that they lasted the entire 13 years without missing a drop.
Jesus Christ.
I've gone on some off-license runs in my time, Tom.
13 years. How do you even plan that out?
If you've got cash, Tom, if you're like these, and I can't name two rich Americans at the time, but if you're one of the Rockefellers and you've got a big New England house with a massive wine cellar, you're like, get that fucking thing filled up with 100 grand's worth of wine, and the cops couldn't come over here and go, excuse me, Mr. Rockefeller, 100 grand's worth of wine. We need to tip that down. A drain. You know?
Just imagine the beer baron.
Yeah, we need to take a fucking axe to all that drink, because it was your drink. You weren't selling it, and you were just consuming it on your own property, not in a bar or a tavern. And again, the rich people never. Here's the thing, Tom: rich people stay rich. Rich people never lose out.
You talk about
the flip side of this. The flip side of this is the poorer working class communities who couldn't do such a thing. They couldn't stock up on drink. They could just kind of get a few quid in here and there, make drink as you wanted it. And this led to the subject of our very podcast, Tom, Moonshine and the bootlegging thereof.
You know, it's funny, like what classifies as bootlegging, I guess, selling booze on the old snaky snake. I remember there was a guy, I came out of a gig in Tala once, and there was people heading back to a house party, and they wanted to know if I wanted to go. I was like, no, thank you very fucking much. You'd be grand. They were like, it's all right, we're getting booze in. I said, listen, the office closed. They were like, no, the booze, man. And he actually had an off the book business. This guy had a Berlingo full to the rim with whatever sauce he could get his hands on. And you weren't arguing at 2:30 a.m. He would just show up and he'd go, I'll take 12 cans of beer. Literally a question mark. Do you have vodka? And he would go, this is what you're getting. And I mean, by all accounts, the guy got pulled several times by the cops, but like, you know, he was making bank.
Of course he was.
Because
like, you know, Tom, it's when they say bootlegging, and I looked it up, it comes from back in the day, I guess, when you were like fucking pirates and shit or some shit, that you'd have a little flask of drink and chuck it into the top of your boots.
Rum down into your galoshes.
Yes, he's bootlegging it. He's sneaking it around the place. You can bootleg pretty much anything you want. I mean, like it does in this instance. We're using it for illicit alcohol and such like, but you've often heard of bootleg DVDs and bootleg CDs.
Yes.
Basically, defined in Prohibition as the unlawful manufacture, sale, or transportation of alcohol without license or payment of taxes.
So it can be anything really, but once you haven't paid the man. Once you haven't paid the fucking man.
So if you're copying DVDs on your DVD machine and selling them down the market.
That was when you get the videos back in the day. Do you remember that right at the top before the movie?
Yeah. Well, now, Prohibition immediately, straight off, the first fucking thing it did, Tom, the first thing it did was generate an entire industry around the illegal manufacture and distribution of alcohol. And that's like, you know, that's within central United States of America. We're not even going to discuss the whiskey that was smuggled in from Canada and further afield, you know? Like, you know, Canada didn't have Prohibition, neither did Mexico. Make all the fucking tequila you want. So if you were up around the border, if you were up in New York and Chicago and all around there, you could smuggle in whiskey from Canada, no bother. If you were down around the south in Los Angeles or where have you, you could fucking get your tequila smuggled up. You're not going to hurt for drink. Someone's going to smuggle in a bottle of alcohol with a label on it that was made in a factory and tested by very, very good people. Tom, we're talking about the moonshine. The moonshine in Central America. We're talking about in your Kansases, in your Atlantas, you know, right in the middle of the country. That is where you started to see all these hidden stills pop up around the place. Essentially,
you're talking about the Appalachians, which are essentially paddies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
OG paddies. OG paddies, recipes handed down the way. They don't have potatoes, pa. What have they got? Corn. Okay, that'll do. Let's make some fucking white lightning.
Because white lightning, what do they call it? Apple pie is another one they flavor with apple through it and stuff like. You know, it's still being made, and they drink it from a mason jar, like Copperhead Road, the song. You know, Steve Earle.
That's what it is, dude.
Copperhead Road is a real song, and it's about a real story and a real road where shit went down. You didn't go down. Nobody went down Copperhead Road because that's where they got to making small little nugget of info that hillbillies, which of course is what, you know, these lads were known as, because they were just in their dungarees with a beard and a hat and making their stuff or whatever.
And lived in hills as well.
And lived in hills. But where do you think the Billy came from? I don't know if I've ever discussed
told me this before. Yeah, go on. What was it?
Yeah, it was again. They were normally Ulster Protestants who weren't the wealthy sort, who basically absconded to America and stuck down a flag somewhere in the Blue Ridge Mountains, whether it was in West Virginia all the way down to Tennessee, I guess. But of course, there were hairy fellas playing out, you know, the jug, the pottery bottle with the fucking with the 3 X's on the front of it. I need to look into what the 4 X's mean on the front. I'm guessing it means hooch of some sort, but you can't write hooch on the side of it again because then it negates the coolness of it or whatever.
I got to tell you, Tom, we'll look into that, but you kind of lost me back there when you said poor Protestants. I was like, someone's having fucking Tom on here. You're in the Appalachians, okay? Yes, there is legal. There's factory-made whiskey in Canada being smuggled into the United States, but nobody's fucking driving it from Ottawa to fucking Kansas, okay? So when you're in those rural areas, you gotta fucking make what you can, and what these lads made was moonshine.
Yeah.
The story of moonshine is basically the same as the story is poitín. It's an unregulated, possibly fatally strong alcohol manufactured under the cover of the night. Hence moonshine, my good man.
It's a cool name.
Oh, it's a cool name. It's cooler than poitín, I have to say. What's your drink called? It's poitín. Why? We make it in a pot. What's yours called? Moonshine, because we do it under the light of the moon. Yeah, I think they have us on that one.
Yeah, they do.
And hey, look, flash forward to today, Tom. You can buy quote-unquote moonshine in stores in America today, but just as the poitín in Tesco isn't really poitín, this moonshine's not really moonshine.
How do you mean? What's it not?
Well, I went to a moonshine tasting in Gatlinburg.
Did you?
Yeah.
You have to give us a brief synopsis of that. Did you put on did you take off your shoes and just walk around barefoot in your dungarees like?
Shoulda. We were on honeymoon and we drove from like New York to Florida with a few stops in between over the course of a month for our honeymoon. Fucking bankrupted us for 2 years, but it was a good time. And we stopped in Gatlinburg. You know, we came inland and stopped in Gatlinburg, and there was a lovely, you'd have loved it. It was like a bluegrass music festival. You sit out in rocking chairs and all this kind of shit. And over in the corner there was a bar and they were doing moonshine tasting. And it was 40% ABV. You could get apple pie flavor, cherry flavor, fucking lemon and lime flavor, whatever it was, and they gave you like a little thimble of it, and you drank it. Yeah, and then you bought it in a fucking
mason jar.
Mason jar, yeah,
yeah,
and brought it home, and we brought home like 3 or 4 jars of it. But it was, you know, it was more like, it was, there we say, the Bacardi Breezer of moonshine.
I was just literally thinking Bacardi Breezer. Because I mean,
it's like, no, you didn't make that Coca-Cola flavored moonshine in a fucking still.
Some fella that looked like fucking Willie Nelson didn't make that out the back of a fucking, no.
The guy, I put it to you, the guy that sold it me had a name tag, Tom. So okay,
fuck off. That's no.
You know, it's not moonshine.
I want Cletus with one tooth in the family and a picture of Willie Nelson and Jesus on the wall.
Well, look, Tom, here's what it is. Yes, I said it there earlier. You make poitín with potatoes, but moonshine was made usually with corn, and this produced a clear liquid that was served during Prohibition in speakeasy taverns over the whole 13-year process, making some people very rich and some people very blind.
You just imagine a whole bar flipping open because my grandfather told me the story of his father, and initially he kept it very bland, but in my head I'd imagine his entire vegetable shop, bananas and everything, would flip over and become waitresses. Like, you know, I just imagined it. It wasn't like that at all. It was literally a very rudimentary affair, selling just bottles of this stuff from underneath the counter.
And in truth, Tom, if we study it, I'm not saying your grandfather did this. I'm sure he was a very fine man. But if you're smuggling whiskey from Canada and you're smuggling in moonshine from down south, and you put the two of them side by side in a bar or a speakeasy, well, people are just going to order the whiskey because fuck knows where the other stuff comes from, right?
Of course.
So what do you do to double your profit?
You stick a label on both of them.
Yeah, you just mix them together.
Yeah, you just
make whatever you want.
Just now, this is my nefarious brain thinking, and we haven't discussed it before, but do you think Irish whiskey makers of the time took advantage of the situation and changed labels, maybe putting a date like 2 years earlier? You know,
honestly, do you know what? I'd say that was one of the least illegal things that was going on at the time.
Okay.
Because you know what? This is it. It's the same problem when we're talking about making anything illegally. The demand is there. People want it. They want to buy it. People want to sell it. People want to make money out of it. But they want it fast and they want it now. So corners are cut. And in the moonshine making industry, you know, if you turn around and go, actually, the first 10, 15 minutes of steam that comes out of that still is poisonous methanol. Don't use that. And you got like a Chicago gangster going like, hey, see, I don't care what it is. Let's just get it into a bucket here and fucking let's get it on the shelves. Time is money, my friend. This is why I let Tom do the...
Clearly Groucho Marx was one of the lads that was sorting out the whole thing for everyone.
This is why I let Tom do the accents, yeah. But like I said, they were making it fast and people were going blind, if not dying. And you ain't gonna go to Al Capone looking for, you know, your money back. But hey, you know, let's not just drink moonshine. Not gonna get too deep into this, but you could also get what was known as bathtub gin. Because,
Lovely.
hey, it was the 20s. Gins was all over the place. You know, it's not just now that people are losing their fucking mind paying €15 for a thing of gin. But, Tom, I hate to bust everybody's bubble. Bathtub gin, not made in bathtubs.
Really?
It won't distill in an open container.
Oh, what do you think they were making in bathtubs? Would they be making anything?
You know what? I think it was just a cool name for it. I can't be mad at them. It is a cool name for it.
It is a cool name for it. In all
Here
fairness.
I am 100 years later referring to it as bathtub gin.
And I guarantee not all moonshine was made at nighttime. But at the same time, it's, you know.
we'll get more into Prohibition era moonshine in a whole separate episode when you know, I think we could swing an episode out of fucking
I think so.
and all this kind of thing. But for now, we're going to move on to one last thing that I learned about Prohibition, Tom. Here's the thing: while Al Capone was making a whole pile of money smuggling, drinking, and selling it in speakeasies and all that kind of thing, there were other people getting rich off America's desire to get shit faced.
Oh,
legal workarounds to the Prohibition problem.
I love these. I love workarounds.
There was one enterprising group of vintners that formed a company called Fruit Industries.
Brilliant.
Which is like, you know,
Brilliant.
Hey, nothing to see here.
Not even trying.
We at Fruit Industries would never break the law. What they manufactured was a compressed brick of powdered concentrated grape juice, which could be dissolved in a gallon of water to make a refreshing, alcohol-free beverage.
Beautiful.
It's basically what you can buy now when you buy Kool-Aid. You buy it in powdered form and you leave it in water and you make, you know, oh yeah.
So why is this even in the episode, Jared? Because I'm actually sobering up reading this shit. Come on.
Well, the manufacturers of this brick, which looked like a little quarter bar of soap, the little fucking soaps that you get in hotels, you know, they issued on the label, even though nobody had asked them for this, but they wrote in large writing on the label that under no circumstances should you make a gallon of this liquid using your compressed grape brick. You should absolutely not leave it in a cupboard for 20 days. Because if you did, it would turn into wine.
Oh.
And who would want such a thing, Tom?
Oh, no. We've ruined our brick. Do you know there's, I don't know if this is bullshit, but did you ever come across, there was like a billionaires program on Netflix where they had these, it was like 3 episodes of these guys who were bad boys of the billionaire world, where basically they were just fucking cowboys. And they were all lads from like Asian backgrounds, you know, whether it was India or Pakistan or whatever. And they just, you know, they had just ridden on the backs of fucking poor people. And there's one guy, he owned a company called Kingfisher. Great, successful beer company. Ridiculous looking man. Giant hair and stuff like that. Tried to open an airline. But by all accounts, Kingfisher brought out instant beer. And it was beer in a sachet. Now, I don't know, maybe we are listeners, anybody, if we have, and we do have listeners in India. We do have listeners in India. We've listeners as far away as Vietnam. And I wonder if somebody could confirm if Kingfisher genuinely made a powder form beer. And if it really is a thing, or was it just a marketing ploy? Because that's just after pinging the thing in my brain. The brick from Fruit Industries. I love
Fruit
that.
Industries.
Their name is such a slap in the fucking face, isn't it? We're making fucking fruit over here.
You know what it is? I can't be mad at these guys in the fucking slightest. Because not only did they claim that they had no idea that this could possibly make wine, and strictly speaking, you could hear them shaking their heads when they were saying it, Tom. Please, everybody, don't use this to easily make wine in your house. They claimed that they had received death threats from crime boss Al Capone, who was making millions from bootlegging, and everybody knew about it. They were like, oh, it's the drink that Al Capone wants to take our kneecaps because of it, because we're muscling in on his territory. Whereas in actual fact, Al Capone was riddled with syphilis at this stage and hadn't a fucking notion what the hell was going on.
Not so. If the truth was to be believed at the time, poor man was shitting all over himself and everything. He was in an awful fucking hobble, the poor devil. So, yeah. These guys, but you know what? I mean, fucking tip of the cap. Tip of the cap.
What have I said this whole podcast, Tom? I can't knock hustle.
Even if they didn't put that on the label, Jer. You know, if they just put a whisper.
Someone would have figured it out, yeah.
Yeah. They absolutely would have figured it out, or they would have put a whisper out there. But the fact that these guys had 2 fingers up to the temperance movement by going, please, for the love of God, think of your children and don't leave it in a cupboard for 20 days covered out of darkness, because it will turn it. With adding, and do not add exactly a gallon, which is an American gallon is 4 liters. Do not add that to this brick, because I am fit to get sick even saying this, but it will actually turn into like 12 to 15% wine. Oh, Jesus Christ. A fruity drink. immediately becomes devil's piss. I'm so sorry, but just don't leave it in the cupboard for 20 days covered out of sunlight in a nice cool environment with a gallon of water, please.
But while we're on the subject as well, Tom, sorry to derail it as well. Do you know who wasn't fucking using Fruit Industries' little Vita wine brick here? The church. Could use real wine all the fucking wanted. Bring it in to do whatever the hell you want. So Fruit Industries, they were challenged on the product, which was known as Vine Glow. That's how it was sold. Vine Glow. They were challenged in the highest courts of the land, while hundreds of thousands of Americans got shit-faced on hot press wine. Eventually, the bricks were made illegal, but it did not matter at this stage because deep in the clutches of the Great Depression, the US government badly needed the revenue from the liquor industry and the votes from a nation of drinking fans. They were getting hammered on all sides. And, you know, they said, fuck it. In 1933, Prohibition was lifted and alcohol was freely available once again in bars and taverns, which were somehow, Tom, just fucking sitting there waiting for the place to be up.
Imagine, like, the glasses were spotless all along, lads. How is that a thing? Isn't it amazing?
But in the 13 years of Prohibition, a lot of people had gotten extremely rich from making and distributing moonshine, and they didn't want to say, like, hey, you know, let's just get the fuck rid of it. And not for nothing, Tom, on the back of it as well, in those 13 years, a lot of people had gotten extremely fond of drinking it. So it's not like they said, shit, I guess we're back to the legal stuff from now on. I'm just going to switch to beer. Moonshine production, just like poitín, when poitín was legalized, moonshine production and consumption remains high in America to this day, despite not just the availability of regular store-bought moonshine like the stuff that I brought home. You can also get an insanely high ABV liquor known as Everclear, which is illegal in many states and has been the ruin of many a young man on his J1, I can tell you that much. I've heard the stories come back about this fucking Everclear. It is a 95% ABV that, as we said earlier in the podcast, Tom, is about as high as you can get distilling.
That is thick with alcohol.
That is thick. Even the makers of Everclear, and this is a drink that you can go over in certain parts of the country, certain parts it's illegal. You can go over to America now and get a bottle of Everclear, but the makers of Everclear state that it shouldn't be drank as it is. Instead, you should buy Everclear and water it down to create something more along the lines of a vodka.
I love that. Like, buy our shit, but fucking water it down to at least make it as weak as vodka. Everclear, for some reason, as you were saying that, I was like, isn't that a Scientology state where you get to the top and then you go Everclear? Isn't that a thing?
You go clear in Scientology?
Oh, you go clear. Yes, you go clear. But you know what? You like.
I think. Do you go clear if you get kicked out?
No. Hey, no.
You know what? Where's the makings of a fucker? Save it for the Scientology episode.
Save it. Note made. Save it for the Scientology one.
But yeah, like, you know, they're going like, you know, here it's fucking alcoholic my waddy. Just add water.
Yeah. The barley sugar flavor. It's lovely,
you know,
when you're playing tennis during the summer. But you know what? There was a whole program on Discovery. It was moonshiners, and it was, I don't know how staged it was or whatever, but basically they were following these lads around different woods in, you know, Tennessee up to West Virginia, and they were constantly being done by the ATF. Were constantly flying choppers overhead, and these lads were making their moonshine. And I said, well, why are you making it? And they said, well, we ain't got nothing else. There ain't no industry around here. You know, and these were all entrepreneurs essentially, but albeit, you know, they were all missing teeth and barefoot and whatnot. But it was a throwback to the old days. But there wasn't another option for these lads. Same as when they made weed legal in California. Of course, the government swooped in and started buying up swathes of land and made it next to impossible to actually grow it. Because, of course, they're going to give it to Big Agri.
Right.
So there's a whole section now in Northern California, which is essentially like the Copperhead Road stuff. You don't go up there. Like, we're talking these lads have anti-aircraft missiles and everything. And I think they call they call it like the weed triangle, like the Bermuda Triangle. Don't go in there. Don't go in there if you're the ATF, because you're going to get shot. Like, because two reasons. One, guys want to still grow old school style and not fall in under the regime of big corporate or whatever. And two, rebel spirited people in America still want to smoke illegal weed. Same way rebel spirited Americans and rebel spirited Irish people still want to drink the under the counter stuff. You know what I mean?
The under the counter stuff, the unregulated stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and hey, what can we say, Tom? What can we say about that? You got your poitín, you got your moonshine. I dare say that legit, real moonshine, not the watered down stuff that I got, But legit real moonshine bought under the counter probably is about the same as poitín in terms of the drinking experience and how it rests on your palate.
I guess so, but you know what I mean? It's probably, they probably nailed it at this stage. But at the same time, I mean, if you want to support local industry, sure. You know what I mean? You don't buy off Smirnoff.
No.
To supplement some fucking oligarch buying a fucking Lamborghini.
Well, and that brings us into the Everclears of this world. This 95% ABV Everclear, which is known, Tom, is known as a rectified alcohol. Okay. So basically, everybody's shouting at me again, but that basically means that you can distill a drink, but then you can redistill it and get more of the water out of it, and then you can redistill it again. You can get more of the water out of it again. So basically, it just keeps getting. Yeah. I think triple distilled is a different thing. The whiskey guys are shouting at me now, but basically, the rectification process here basically means you keep stripping out more and more of the water out of it until it's thicker and thicker with alcohol.
I'm with you. Okay, right. So it's not actually 3 times the distilling process. I get you. I guess
when they're triple distilling it, it's like, okay, let's distill it to 20, then 30, then 40.
Yeah.
Whereas what these fuckers are doing is like, let's take a 50%, make it a 70, and then subsequently make that a 90. Okay, so you're going to get these fucking crazy ABVs from your Everclear in your 70s, 80s, and 90s. And depending on where you are in the country, you may not be able to buy the 90% Everclear. Well, we don't sell that around here, so we only sell the 70% Everclear. And in fact...
damn it. I was hoping to get fucked up tonight.
Yeah, like the 70 won't do it. Drinking another thimbleful. It's these things are legally produced, Tom. Everclear as an industry probably fucking trades on the stock market. But it's only legal to buy it in certain parts of the country. Sometimes it's not lawful to export it. They'll stop you in the airport if you're 95% Everclear trying to take it out of the country. You might be able to buy it in a certain county, but not drink it in another county. So when it comes to rectified alcohols, it seems that they exist in a fairly grey legal area that I myself, in my week of research, couldn't really figure it out. But here's what I did find out, Tom. Everclear isn't the only people doing this. You can get rectified alcohols all around the world, okay? They're not necessarily moonshines. Every country has its own moonshine, I'm sure. But every country also has its quote-unquote local spirit, that if you're a young Irish man in a Kerry jersey traveling the world and you land in any of these places, you're probably going to end up drinking one of these out of pure bravado. Would you like to take a spin around the world with me, Tom?
Please.
Should you find yourself in Bolivia, my fine friend, you might find yourself drinking a bottle of a stuff called Cocoroca.
Nice.
Again, well up in the fucking 95s. This is the stories that you ever hear of people that came home from holidays and be like, and I was in a place and they served me a stuff, and ho-ho! That place might be Brazil, where they serve stuff called cachaca.
Nice.
Or pisco, which is served in Chile. Let's get away from South America. You got mfofo in Cameroon. You've got landi in Iceland. And in South Africa, Tom, you've got Witblitz.
I know those last two. I have tasted those last two.
I fucking knew you would have. I knew I wasn't going to go through this list without you hitting one of them. Where did you fucking drink Witblitz?
Witblitz, there was mates. They were brother and sister. They were phenomenal workers. They were from just outside Johannesburg, and amazingly, they worked here in Ireland in the construction industry, in the golf course construction industry, and they stayed. They just liked the safety and everything else. Weirdly, they liked the Pistons rain. Both of them were gifted, basically, ranches by their parents. She had like a fucking olive farm taken away over. I'm like, what are you doing here? And the Pistons are in, but they just loved it and whatnot. But they had, to a point that between them, they bought a property here, and they had a container of furniture brought over, and the container wasn't gone through with a fine-tooth comb. So they brought a ton of wine, they brought a ton of bits and pieces, and lots of different things. And they brought
bits and pieces.
And it was like, good morning, Dom. And now it's like we're getting grind off the job today, and we were talking about going to the bar, because that'd be great. But we got to have some, a braai up at the house, which is a barbecue in South Africa. They have a braai.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'm all over this. You're speaking my language. We're rained off for the next 2 days. We got nothing else to do. We're all well paid. Let's go get fucked up and let's eat some barbecue first. So up we had the braai, and they're cooking all sorts of beefs and stuff. And all of a sudden, Witblitz comes out. And again, it's exactly what you imagine. It's poitín. And we're working with all these fucking hardy old bastards. Well, fuck me. One sip of Witblitz. Now, granted, it was the middle of the day. The party wasn't really among us at the time. It was like a Thursday. And this shit Whoo, whoo. It hurt. It hurt going in, but they were supping out of it like it was mother's milk. The rest of us,
Right.
it turned my teeth inside out. I don't know, but it came
like it strikes me, Tom. Like I drank that fucking Crystal Skull vodka one time when it was slightly stronger than other vodkas, but still only in the 50s, and it tasted like sucking a magic marker.
I think it gets to a point where people are lying to themselves. You know, going, it's just tastes like you know, I just love it. It's just fantastic. You just taste it, blitz, a little bit of brine, maybe some jerky, which of course, you know, we call biltong, where I'm from. And of course,
The biltong, yes.
It just takes you straight back to the savannah, you know, where you're just sitting out and you may be watching as the sun goes down. And you're like, shut the fuck up, Fritz. This stuff is stink. I don't care where or what. This is fucking, like, poitín is stink as well. This is for just getting fucked up. Don't let the fucking, the Rainbow Nation fucking cover your eyes right now. This is fucking disgusting. I'm telling you that. And needless to say,
what about the Landy?
Landy came from a producer friend that produced when I did that one-man show, Defended the Caveman. He owns the international rights of it outside of America. And we went for a day trip to visit him in Iceland. And we went to his offices, and we were all, it was skull this, skull that. And I thought we were having just a fucking, this is a traditional Viking thing you do. And myself and the other boss man, he was looking at me going, this smells like a yak's cock. I'm pretty sure it's going to, but it would have been rude not to taste it. Well, lo and behold, wouldn't you know it? I never sniffed a yak's cock, but I bet I bet I could find one in the fucking dark, because Landy was fucking stink. I know.
And tell me, Tom, did you drink because Vitblitz is like Everclear, you can buy it in the shop, like, and it's fucking mad. Landy is, if my research was anything to go by, it was like poitín. It was all illegal until at some stage they legalized, and now you can buy it in the shop. So I'm imagining that if your man was distributing it, then it was like legal Landy, so to speak.
Oh, it was. I there was no story preceding it. You know, if somebody
like
brought in,
it wasn't in a Gordon's dry gin bottle, for example.
No, and he didn't bring it in a fucking welly, and tell me not. But it was, Hafthor brought this down from the mountain. It's just amazing. No, he mentioned nothing, because he would, if you were after getting some fucked up sauce off a friend, like I told you about the one-eyed guy, you would tell the story of the one-eyed guy, and that it was just brought out, and it said, it wasn't even Skull they were saying some other fucking gobbledygook. I'm sure I'm insulting all 300,000 people that are living in Iceland right now. But both were stink, in my opinion. Just saying. Just fucking saying.
It is a testament, Tom, that if this first half of the podcast is anything to go by, moonshine or poitín or whatever you want to call it, it's common around the world because the ingredients are fairly simple, the equipment is easy to come across or indeed make, and as long as you study what you're about to do, you probably shouldn't poison yourself or anyone too much. With that being said, Tom, that methanol will fuck you up sideways and sneak in real handy.
Like the fact that you said you shouldn't poison yourself. Come on.
Like a real simple one is the alcohol we mentioned up the way, which is called grappa, which is made from grapes. You make it perfectly fine to drink, knock you sideways, beat you up and take your lunch money. That's fine. But if you've been making that and you've been careless and you've been throwing in stems of the grapes and bits of sticks and leaves and every goddamn thing, and that's all fermented in the mix, that's where you get a heavy dose of methanol in it, and that will stop your gallop real quick. So it's fraught with difficulty, Tom.
Just as I slightly referenced Snoop Dogg earlier on with the sticky icky, another famous line from D.O.G.G. No sticks, no stems.
Yes.
Ger. No, and there's a reason why he don't want them in his blunts or his fucking spliffs. Sticks and stems to be fucking his fucking vibe up, because his queer old fucking smoke comes out of them yolks. In the same sense, keep out the fucking pips and the sticks out of the fucking wine or out of the grappa, and we'll be okay. Because other than that, them yolks aren't meant to be boiled down or distilled down, because all of a sudden now you're getting stanky, anky methanol coming out of it. And nobody wants that.
Like we It's like we said with methanol back up the way. It's not a case of like, oh, I had a pint with a bit of methanol in it last night. Yeah, I have a bit of a sore stomach tonight. It's like, no, I drank a thimble full of methanol and now I will never see my grandkids because I am blind.
It's a fucking tightrope, isn't it?
But I personally would stay away from it, Tom. But hey, you know what? Let's take a little change of speed now for the last little bit of the podcast, Tom. Okay, so we've talked about moonshines, and I don't feel... You know what? When I started this podcast, when we started researching it, Tom, we were like, let's go country by country and name every single fucking thing. But by and large, as we've said up there, it's all going to taste like fucking grim death. It's all, you know, boiled in the still. It's all basically the same. But let's see what happens, Tom, when you don't have either the ingredients or the equipment to make alcohol, but you still want to get shit-faced. Tom, how can you MacGyver drink out of thin air? You know? We've been here, okay? It's real simple, Tom. Here's how you get drink when no drink is available. Perhaps when we were younger men, Tom, and we couldn't get served in bars, and we sure as fuck weren't going to distill anything out the back of the house, but we wanted to go to a quote-unquote non-alcoholic disco, Tom. How did we get drink?
You stole it. Plain and simple.
Stole it, Tom.
You were a felon.
Drink from the drinks cabinet in the house. You went in and you took just enough out of a bottle that it wouldn't be noticed.
It was always fucking noticed. I found it out later in life. A friend of mine thought it was a good idea. I don't know if I ever told you this, but while we were all topping it up with water, kind of ingeniously, but inevitably he got caught. He was topping up a bottle of Powers or Paddy with cold tea. Now think about that.
Hey,
you know,
that's...
I mean, he was fucking thinking. It's one thing to be, you know, topping up the vodka or the gin or whatever with water, but he was fucking thinking. Now, eventually you're going to hit a ratio where tea to fucking Paddy.
Right.
You know, and also he was then drinking tea flavored Paddy as per he was robbing more of it. It was getting stronger as it was. But
maybe there's another brother in the house or something doing the same.
Yes, exactly. So
you know, you've actually given me a fucking great idea, Tom. 25 years too late.
Oh shit!
When I was robbing from the vodka, you thinking what I'm thinking? When you're robbing from the gin bottle, what's gin drank with?
Tonic, of course. It is gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic, buddy. So when you're skimming from the gin bottle, you should have been filling it back up with tonic.
Yes, because that's what they do. That's what they do.
And when you're skimming from the fucking vodka bottle, we should have been filling it back up with 7-Up.
Oh my God.
You should fill the brandy back up with ginger ale.
Hey, if we put actual sugar in it, do you think... No, it wouldn't distill and actually turn into more alcohol again.
Would it?
No.
Would it do something in the drinks cabinet from one end of the year to the next? Hey, look, if we have any under 18 listeners listening to this and want a fucking cracking idea how they can rob vodka from their parents' house without getting caught as quickly as they might be, because you will get caught, throw a drop of 7-Up in it as you're taking it out.
Look, we're here for you when it comes to
ideas,
advice.
Man. Right. You know what, Tom? I'm going to tell you this now, okay? If you have ever went to your parents' drinks cabinet as a young man and skimmed off an imperceptible amount of alcohol for your own consumption purposes, hoping that nobody would ever be any the wiser, you're doing exactly what US Navy personnel in the Second World War did while on patrol in warships in the Pacific Ocean and further afield. Alcohol at the time, Tom, was forbidden on board. You're not going to bring alcohol onto a fucking warship, sailor. What are you doing? Tip it out there. And it's not like there was an off license or a bar for thousands of miles. You're in the middle of the fucking Pacific Oceans. And the sailors that were on these warships, they lacked the facilities to brew any drink in their quarters, so they did what we did while we were teenagers, Tom. They stole a bit of alcohol here and there to have raging parties and get shit-faced drunk. But they weren't stealing it from the Admiral's liquor cabinet, Tom, no. They were tapping into the fuel tanks of the torpedoes on board to create a drink known as torpedo juice.
I swear to God, Jerry, if we end up actually making a Tom and Jerry show, beer or something, which I think we probably should end up doing just to test this theory, we have to call it torpedo juice.
Gotta call it torpedo juice.
We have to call it torpedo juice. Jesus
torpedo juice,
Christ. I mean, do you need to know more if there was a bottle of that on the counter? I'm not seeing anything. I'm tunnel visioning at something called torpedo juice. But I like the idea of it not actually being literal. I like the idea of somebody is called, like, yeah, no, when you drink a fucking an energy drink and it's got Zip or fucking
Monster.
Monster. I don't expect it to be made of monsters. I want it to taste, like the sugary shit I need to get, a 4-hour drive home from fucking Belfast to get me home. But I have a funny feeling this is a bit more literal than I was hoping. Am I wrong?
No, shit's about to get real, Tom, because the torpedoes on board your US vessels in World War II, they were powered by tiny little steam engines. I'm sure Fred Dibnah would have.
I love it. I was just thinking the same thing. Tiny little Fred Dibnah driving.
Slowest
torpedo
Tom,
ever.
Give us tiny little Fred Dibnah there playing with a tiny little steam engine.
I do have to say, I've always admired the Navy, and as soon as first opportunity they came to me, I was above boat, and I was dropping me out chimneys, and I said, "Hey, Fred, we need a way to get our torpedoes across water to blast the shit out of a boat. Now, we've tried all sorts. Fire don't work underwater. We've tried, asking it nicely, even pushing it. Do you think you could strap a little steam engine? There'll be no shortage of water. You won't have to pull in that hydrant, every 4 mile or whatnot. You just need to get it in a straight line. Don't even have to bring the family. Just drive torpedo cross water into enemy. I'll gladly accept it."
Fred, can I ask you a quick question? If this torpedo does go across the water and hit a Japanese destroyer and sink it, what will all those Japanese sailors get?
Well, of course, it's standard. They're all going to get a half day out with half day out with the Undertaker. I love the notion that there's a Fredzuka on the other end. From some northern fucking Japanese town, fucking factory town, who thinks the exact same way as Fredina. Oh no, turn around.
So yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm borderline now. I'm borderline with the accents where I'm starting to venture into fucking lands where there is no more return. So don't tempt me out anymore.
Well, let's stick to what we're good at. Okay, so these vessels, the torpedoes, they are indeed. They're powered by tiny little steam engines, okay?
Oh, brilliant!
A little steam engine on board the torpedo that took up the bulk of the torpedo, and it was fueled by a grain alcohol, Tom, that clocked in at around about 90% ABV.
Shit.
Yeah, so the alcohol would create a fire, the fire would burn the water would create steam, and the steam would turn a propeller, and the torpedo would fuck off over and ruin a whole pile of Japanese people's day. And the exhaust from the steam coming out of the torpedo would give it that trademark sort of bubble in the water kind of look.
Okay.
But you know what? The alcohol that was driving these torpedoes, it wasn't pure ethanol. There were various other chemicals and indeed a not insignificant dose of methanol in there as well. So drinking it straight out of the torpedo was an almost certain to lead to a deep sickness and indeed a fair share of blindness.
For the love of fuck, I've wanted a drink many times in my life, but if there comes a time, if it's too hard to get that drink or the outcome is, does it really warrant? But then again, I've never been on a fucking destroyer for 6 months, scratching my balls going, oh, lads, we've seen no action. We've seen no action. We've got all these tiny little Fred Dibnahs downstairs in the torpedo room. What say we? And after a while, you'd smell it too, wouldn't you? It's not, they're not all going to seal tight. You go, fuck it, just a little drop. I'll water it down. I'll water it down. And all of a sudden, you see Tommy stumbling around the place, start fucking singing, old sea shanties, because of course they're famous now again for some reason. When the fuck did that happen, actually? Well, sea shanties
who's
became
to say,
a thing.
Tom, it's a fucking matter for another podcast. But as we're about to learn here, there's a reason why people say drunk as a sailor. Okay. So sailors not wanting to die, they fucking knew that you couldn't just suck torpedo juice straight out of the goddamn thing. They didn't want to die from drinking it that way, no more than they wanted to die from a fucking kamikaze pilot. So instead, they devised a crude filtration system that involved tapping off some torpedo fuel, letting it drip through a smushed flat loaf of bread, and that would remove just enough of the methanol and other chemicals to allow the spirits to be drank in relative safety, usually with a mix of fresh pineapple juice in a cocktail that became known as torpedo juice, Tom.
Well, fuck me. I mean, I've never been a fan of cocktails, and that doesn't inspire me in the least bit. I love how there would be no bread after week 2. You know, it's like, well, where's the bread? It's like, well, we have some methanol fucking soaked bread down in the fucking galley. Like, and you know, they had to test that with how much bread.
Oh, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. They're like, okay, we've got a pipe. Let's smush bread into it, and then let's pour this torpedo the fuel on top of it and put a can underneath it, and it will drip through it in the course of a day, 2 days, who fucking knows. And yeah, it'll probably take the methanol out of it.
But what I'm saying is, like, did they use a whole loaf day 1, or did they use like 3 slices, and then fucking Timmy still went blind and they went, put in another slice, bring in one of the lads, and let's see what happens.
Oh yeah, rest assured there was some some trial and error with this one. In actual fact, Tom, if you've ever seen the movie The Master with Joaquin Phoenix, it's the Scientology movie. Philip Seymour Hoffman's in it as well.
Oh yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix plays a Navy seaman, and he makes torpedo juice. That's why he has to leave the Navy. He has to flee the Navy, go AWOL, if I remember the movie correctly, because he's making torpedo juice, drinking it straight out of the torpedo like a mad bastard, but somebody on board or one of his pals or some such drinks enough to kill him, and there's all sorts of shenanigans, so Joaquin Phoenix fucks off. And the rest of the movie unfolds.
You know the term drunken sailor, what it refers to?
Not these guys, I don't think.
No, it doesn't at all. It's to do with
predates them, I'd say.
It's post-dates them, actually. It's floppy cock syndrome as a result of too much booze.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor?
Exactly. Stick him in the bed with the captain's daughter. Pointless because it's flopping all over the room. Can't push a rope. You
really?
Yeah. In the immortal words of Tommy Tiernan, "'Tis a bad bastard that would even attempt to do something with a floppy Mickey." Do you know?
Well, listen, speaking of drunken sailors, Navy bosses got wise to the use of torpedo fuel as an intoxicant, and they added various chemicals and poisons to the mix to deter the crew from tapping into the stockpile of torpedoes. Number 1, they didn't want their crew to fucking die from alcohol poisoning, and number 2, they needed these torpedoes to fucking blow up some Japanese ships, not conk halfway out across the water like.
I know the idea of it going, just flopping about halfway there, just little Fred going, I don't know what's happened. It's just bummed out. It's all juice is gone. Jesus.
Like, Tom, if you're an admiral on a US destroyer and you issue a command to fire starboard, fire all, and you watch your torpedoes race across the sea to a Japanese destroyer that's fucking leaning down on you, and just one by one, they're just like...
Also, put yourself in the boots of the Japanese lads. If they see it coming, they haven't and all of a sudden it's like, aha, and it just...
Yeah, and then they look across at the other boat going like, what the hell's going on? And all the sailors are on our fucking shit face falling in the water.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, if you weren't conscripted or whatever, but, you know, you actually joined because you wanted to serve your country and do well in the war and everything else. But this is the strength of booze, Ger. You're literally disarming the entire boat. The
means boat. to be safe.
Yeah. You're literally cutting off your fucking hands in a fight. You're going, you know what, though? We still had a good fucking night. Yeah.
Well, like I say, Navy bosses got wise to this process, and you're rest assured someone fucking ratted the boys out here now.
For sure.
Captain, they're drinking. Fucking dipshit. So, the Navy bosses poisoned the ethanol in the torpedoes, and sailors never got drunk again, Tom. Did they fuck? They found ways around it, my good friend.
Of course it
One of the ingredients that was... Yeah, of course it did. They wanted a drink. One of the ingredients that was added to the fuel was an oil called croton oil, which was put in for a purpose. If you drank croton oil, minutes later, you would have a spectacular evacuation of your bowels. It was just like... It was movie prep, Tom.
Oh, so much like movie prep or Bulmer's Pear when it came out first. You could drink 1 pint, you could drink 2 pints, but if you're going to drink a 3rd pint, bring a fucking nappy, because things are got too much saccharin, apparently. They use the false sugar.
That'll do it. That's
much
that.
saccharin.
What did they call it? What did they call it? The sorbets, Tom, that they put into chewing gum. You know, there's a label on the
Yes.
side of chewing gum that says
Yes.
excessive consumption will have laxative effect. I had a whole pack of fucking Wrigley's Extra one day, and it's sorbitol. That's what it is. Sorbitol on the side of it. It gives it that sort of sugar-free mintiness.
Right.
And if you eat too much of that in one go, a pack of Wrigley's will fucking
Empty.
hasten your journey to the jacks. So
Your croton oil is fucking flowing, is what you're saying. Croton oil. It sounds like it comes from a planet in Star Trek, doesn't it?
Oh, it would just like fucking empty out completely instantly. So it was a case of the sailors are all sitting around like, well, it's a hard day being the sailors, lads. What do you say we fucking have a wee drop of torpedo juice? Here's a wee drop of pineapple in it. All right, chin up, lads. Ting. Glug, 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 glug.
And on a boat downstairs as well, locked in a tight container. That's going to be fucking messy.
You know what? That's why they call it the ship's mess, Tom. Bye. Look, Tom.
Ew.
Ew. So here we go. But look, fuck it, Tom. If this episode has shown us anything, it shows us that where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
So sailors, when they were met with this croton oil, they needed to get it the fuck out of it so they could get to the sweet, sweet ethanol inside. So they had little stills called gilly stills that would boil off the croton oil, separate it from the alcohol underneath it. And they continued, Tom, having mastered this process with these little stills that were not as apparent to the top brass when they were doing dorm room checks and whatever. Dorm rooms. Bunks. There you go. Dorms. Yeah, fucking two to a man. The Navy just continued to get fucking shit-faced on torpedo juice until the top brass said, you know what? Fuck this. I mean, like, you know, we've poisoned it and they're still getting it. Outlawed it and they're still getting it. So what we're going to do is we're going to commission the construction and deployment torpedo, which ran on an electric motor rather than a steam engine and therefore contained no drinkable spirits whatsoever. Sorry about that, Fred.
The fucking effort and the dangers they went to get a bit of fucking booze out of the thing. Could you have not maybe headed the whole situation off at the pass and find the guy that's loading the galley with fucking provisions? I said, here, in among all them fucking spuds, would you throw in a couple of fucking, swing in a couple of fucking flagons for me there, would you? Like,
smuggle me in a naggin.
Smuggle me in a couple of naggins for the boys. And would you?
I mean, if fucking every young lassie in Ireland can get a naggin into a nightclub, are you telling me the US Navy couldn't get a fucking a keg of beer onto a destroyer?
It's true. Like, I mean, Jesus, Mary and fucking Joseph, like, I think that, do you know what? Again, maybe it's the rebel spirit in him that they, you get, once upon a time, you'd only get the only people with earrings once upon a time were pirates who'd actually crossed the hemisphere twice. You got a fucking, what you call it? You got another tattoo, I think, when you'd crossed another, the Cape of fucking horniness or whatever. Maybe this was an initiation where, like, only fucking soft lily fucking loving fucking landlubbers drink regular sauce. We're on a boat. We're drinking out of the arse end of a fucking death rocket.
Torpedo.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's it. And rebel torpedo juice, Tom. It just with the advent of the electric torpedo juice became like Guinness, bro. You couldn't buy it if you fucking wanted it. It was gone. Literally gone.
Guinness, bro. Yeah. Sup, bro?
We're going to move on from the Navy to another group of men packed in together in a confined space with a fierce thirst on them. Prisoners. Prisoners have the same problems as sailors, but they don't got torpedoes, you know what I mean? So what they had to do was turn their hand to brewing with whatever they had available to them, leading to what is known as prison wine.
It almost sounds a bit classy. Torpedo juice was torpedo juice. They didn't. Yeah, they called it what it was. Prison wine almost has like if you put a fada or an umlaut over that, it would be prison wine. It's too close to being classy because I have a funny feeling this is going to be more of the same fucking dirt jar.
This is bad. This is bad, Tom.
It's prison.
This one's a bad one. And it has to be said, the prisoners were in basically the same position as the sailors, but the sailors never turned to brewing wine because wine is a much lower ABV than the readily available actual fucking rocket fuel that was downstairs. So they never really bothered making wine, or if they did, stories haven't really come through because torpedo juice kind of steals the thunder.
Yeah.
But in prison, they can't say they don't have torpedoes and they're not going to set up a distillation still. So they're saying, you know what? A nice wine, Tom, a nice sangria will do me rightly in the evening.
If you like pina coladas and getting caught in the showers, if you like pina colada.
You like pina colada and getting 3 days in the hole. So like we said earlier, first thing we said in this podcast, Tom, is you can turn pretty much anything into alcohol if you can kick off a fermentation process using yeast and give it enough time in an undisturbed, dark place. Add an ingredient to yeast, put it in a dark place, sit back. That's going to turn into alcohol. That's just simple. That's going to happen.
Correct.
So while prisoners can normally get their hands on fruits and that are suitable for making some form of wine, yeast is a strictly forbidden item in prison. So you have to make do with whatever yeast you can lay your hands on. In prison, that usually means bread. Moldy bread.
Oh, clearly they love a touch of penicillin as well with their fucking yeast. Lovely.
Well, this might be the first alcoholic beverage that will sicken you and cure you in one fucking
Oh, I would say the former is where we're probably going to land with this one.
Yeah. Well, listen, Tom, you don't want your moldy bread to mix with your wine because that would be gross.
Yeah.
But you do need it to activate the process, so it has to be in the presence of it. So what prisoners would do is construct a rudimentary filter out of the socks they were wearing. They would take their socks off, they would stuff them full of moldy bread and tie a knot in it, and this is your yeast source. There are no buckets or kettles readily available. You know, if you have a pot, by all means, but best of luck getting it back to your cell. So what the prisoners will do is they will put this stock into a plastic bag, along with your fruits, along with a drop of water or juice, sugar. To be honest with you, Tom, from what I can see, whatever you have, fuck it into the bag. It's not going to do any harm.
Do you know the way people went mad for fucking sourdough there for a while? Like they were going, oh, I just need a starter. I just need a starter at age. Brenda up the road was after giving me an amazing new starter that she got from Dorina Allen's shop. And this is, and the boys are going, yo, man, you got the sock. You got the starter sock.
Like, so what we've got is a bag of moldy fruit, moldy bread, and a sock. So what you need to do is leave that to ferment. And it will turn into alcohol, Tom. That's just simple fucking science. But whereas in the outside world, you can leave it for weeks or months to really ferment and get something good going on, in prison, time is scarce. Most prison wines are left for a few days at best because you don't want to leave it lying around for the screws to find it. You need it somewhere hidden and somewhere dark. And that is why most prison wine is brewed in the cell toilet.
Well, it just gets better and better, doesn't it? Like, I mean, mouldy sock, mouldy bread, fucking pretty horrendous from the get-go. You can't imagine it's going to get...
Tesco bag.
Yeah, it's in a Tesco bag. You don't see it getting too much worse, really. You're like, okay, sock, the whole lot, you're in a plastic bag, maybe some juice. The sugar might brighten the whole situation up, and then you take it literally into the gutter, and now you're going to store it in the shitter. Great.
For as little time as possible. I mean, like, as best as I understand alcohol manufacture, leave it a bit longer, it's going to get a little bit nicer. But with this, it's a case of, hey man, you got that prison wine? Well, I only put it in the toilet earlier today. Fuck it. We gotta go. We got a Catalina wine mixer this evening. We gotta go, buddy. I mean, and not for nothing, they chose the best possible name for it, Tom, in calling it prison wine. I mean, I guess you didn't want to call it what it really was, which was sock wine.
Or yeah, shitter wine. Yeah, it's... Also, I love the notion, like, that because during the boom, when prior to the boom in Ireland, prior to the early 2000s, nobody drank wine. You know, maybe the odd Protestant or the odd priest, but nobody drank wine. But being quintessential fucking Irish people who never had not forever were typical of somebody who gets a lot all of a sudden. Now you become a fucking accustomed and an expert. And the whole country went fucking mad on wine. And now you get wankers who actually stand around going, I'm getting notes of, I'm going to hazelnut there. I mean, you can almost taste the South African the red soil. Can't you really taste the difference there? It's just there's a bouquet, isn't there? There's a bouquet when you. Oh my! I love the notion that a bunch of prisoners would stand.
Bouquet off. There's a bouquet off this one, Tom.
There's a fucking bouquet of dookie off this one, son. This is nasty.
And not for nothing, Tom, the longer you leave it, the higher the alcohol you will get. So in some instances with this, you've got fuck all of a bang of it. The strength of prison wine, what it comes out at, who fucking knows? Who knows, Tom? It could be anything. It could be anything from like 0.55 ABV to, if you were lucky and could leave it a little longer, or it just activated itself a little better, in the high teens. I mean, 0.55 is Club Shandy back in the day.
That's actually a non-alcoholic beverage in Ireland.
Children,
That's a non-alcoholic beverage in Ireland.
And if you get it in the high teens, well and good. And here's the thing, Tom. If you've got your yeasty starter in your sock, your moldy bread, that's not a one and done item, my friend.
Okay.
You make a batch of prison wine, you drink it, and then you use that same sock, and in your next batch, because it's proven good. That was a good sock.
That's the starter. You just move it on. It's
Shout out to Cletus in 419. He's got a good sock there. I'm making some wine. Tell him I want that good sock that he had last week. But that's what it is, Tom. In prison, you take what you can get. Prison wine, I always kind of knew it as prison wine. I'd heard about prison wine. But in the research for this, I learned it has another name called Pruno.
Oh, that's just getting pretentious now. I'm sorry.
It is. It's a little, yeah. I mean, tell us what you're really drinking. It's fucking toilet wine, okay? Pruno, although I will give credit where credit is due, Pruno is not necessarily just the toilet wine made in the process that I've explained to you there, Tom. It's like a catch-all phrase for any illicit hooch made in the clink. You're drinking Pruno. It could be anything. It could be fucking whatever it is. It just kind of all falls under Pruno. By all accounts, it smells like old piss. It tastes like old piss. But if you're looking to get drunk while you're doing a 20 for armed robbery, Pruno will get you the job done. And quite frankly, it's Pruno or it's nothing.
I get it. Okay, I get it. But fuck. You'd be thinking of taking the old pledge with the badge again, wouldn't you? If you
yeah, you just turn around and go, yeah, you know what? I'm good for drink. I'm good.
I'm good. Jesus Christ almighty. Because it's going to taste like piss and smell like, at the very, very least, it's going to smell like piss. Because they don't have a press to put it in. They don't have a nice little fucking linen closet to put it in and leave it there over a month. Literally,
they don't even have the fucking vine glow brick in the hot press making wine.
No, hanging down the jacks. Jesus, I don't think that bothers me as much.
So
I think it's the sock. The sock bothers me more than anything. I think.
Well, all I'll say is, like, next time you're getting apples or oranges in a net bag, save the net bag. There's ways around this, lads.
There is.
Well, what we're going to do now, Tom, is we're going to finish with a poem. We're going to finish with a poem. Yes, indeed. This poem is an award-winning poem called Recipe for Prison Pruno. And it won some prestigious award in the early 90s for a San Quentin inmate called Jarvis Masters, who is still in prison to this day, as best as my research will tell me. You turn around to yourself and go like, wait, he was in prison in the early 90s and he's still in prison now? Hey, that's prison for you. But he wowed judges with this poem called Recipe for Prison Pruno. Would you take it away for us there, Tom?
Take 10 peeled oranges. Jarvis Masters. It is the judgment and sentence of this court. 1 8-ounce bowl of fruit cocktail. That the charge information was true. Squeeze the fruit in a small plastic bag and the jury having previously on said date. Put that juice along with the mash inside, found that plenty shall be death. Add 16 ounces of water, seal the bag tightly, and this court having on August 20, 1991. Place the bag in your sink, denied your motion for a new trial, heated with hot running water for 15 minutes. It is the order of this court that you suffer death. Wrap towels around the bag and keep it warm for fermentation. Said penalty to be inflicted within the walls of San Quentin. Stash the bag in your cell undisturbed for 48 hours, at which place you shall put to death. When the time has elapsed, and the manner prescribed by law, add 40 to 60 cubes of white sugar. The date later to be fixed by the court in warrant of execution. 6 tablespoons of ketchup. You will remain in the custody of Warden of San Quentin, then heat again for 30 minutes to be held by him pending final secure of the bag as done before. Determination of your appeal, then stash the bag undisturbed again for 72 hours. It is so ordered. Reheat daily for 15 minutes. In witness whereof, after 72 hours, I have herein set my hand as judge of the superior court, with a spoon, skim off the mash, and I have caused the seal of this court to be affixed thereto. Pour the remaining portion into 2 18-ounce cups. May God have mercy on your soul.
There you go, Tom. Oh my God. How about that? And I do believe that's also the recipe for McDade's football special.
I'll be honest with you, not one iota. How much fucking Pruno was this buy on when he was right?
Apparently that is a classic recipe for Pruno. Like we said, throw it into a dark place for 72 hours. He's putting ketchup and fuck knows what into it because it's just whatever they had at hand.
I'll be honest, it's a long way off.
They're running the bag under hot water as well. I forgot to say that.
It's a long way off the Hairy Bikers, your mum's cookbook. To be honest with you, it's a long way off it now. Not in there. I have no idea what the man's on about, but I kind of got. I mean, there was a couple of measurements. There was a couple of methods. Do you know, he's not as bad as those fucking doses that I've talked to you about in the past when you go to look up a recipe and all of a sudden they tell you about the weekend they spent.
He's a blogger.
He's a blogger. He's a fucking blogger, the cunt.
Yeah.
Fucking blogger.
It's like, before I give you this recipe for prison Pruno, oh boy, I just got sentenced to death in San Quentin.
Hey, did you know Johnny Cash? Did you? Did you see Johnny Cash play? Did you, Jarvis?
Oh, stars. Oh my good God. We're gonna put that up on the socials here. You can take a look at it. And not for nothing, Jarvis Masters is still in jail and he's appealing his thing, so we'll throw him a couple of signatures.
Oh yeah, for sure. Jesus. But I tell you one thing.
We'd be bad man or not to.
I hope I did it justice, Jarvis, if you do end up hearing this, because there's every weird possibility that he may end up in if they're allowing podcasts in prison. Hopefully he'll allow this one. I hope I didn't give a fucking recipe out to everybody else, but look, it's on your head.
He gave a recipe.
He gave it out. He fucking won an award. He won
an award for it. Jarvis is grand. Death penalty notwithstanding.
He's making a decent
there
amount
you go,
of it too. 40 to 60 cubes of white sugar. I fucking learned a lot there. Yeah. Would you believe it? I learned a lot.
I learned just enough to fucking kill myself next time I make drink. I learned enough to ponder how I got this far without killing myself.
So I'll put it to you this, Ger. This is our wrapping up moment, and I think I need to put a question or two to you. Why? Why alcohol? Why do we need a stimulant like this? Are we not happy like the Native Americans who basically James Cameron based Avatar on, who plugged into nature and whatnot? Why a stimulant of alcohol? Why is it so many of us decided that this is a thing? Around the world, what is the reason for us wanting to get fucked up for the last 1,000 fuck? Fuck that. They reckon they found booze in China that was 7,000 years old. Why have we been doing it to ourselves? It sends us backwards. It don't give us no more brains.
I still haven't figured out why there's so many songs about rainbows. So I think this question is a little beyond me. But hey, why illegal alcohol when there's store-bought alcohol sitting there waiting to be drunk is what I want to know.
That's the thing. And I said it throughout. I think I would answer the question myself. I think it's the boldness of it, Ger.
It is the bravado of it, Tom.
It is. It's the rebel spirit. And you love to tell a story. I've never bothered my whole telling a story how, okay, in college we bought some vodka. Who gives a fuck? But the stuff that I got in Galway that time, or that guy with one eye from Monaghan, who was definitely in a fucking group of sorts. I've told that story countless times because it's a story. Illegal booze.
I bought a bottle of absinthe in Lanzarote, like in fucking 2005 when I was on holidays, and it was like something crazy, like 70% ABV or whatever was on it. And I brought it home with the intention that this will get drunk at some stage. And that is still in the press at home, because whatever happened of that year, the year I bought it, I was stupid enough to buy it, but not stupid enough to drink it. And it's still there. I've just never drank it. And I was there. You know what? You're gonna take this out at a party sometime, and a load of people are gonna drink it, and they're gonna go blind, and they're gonna fucking die because it's killer fuel. Leave that shit in the press, and it's still in the press. I
would argue it's still in the press because you bought it. It's not sexy. You know what I mean? There's almost something sexy about fucking. You see it in the movies when a gun has the serial number rubbed off on it. It's now a throwaway. And that's a fucking bad man has a throwaway. You know what I mean? I think there's a fucking rebel in some of us. There's that warrior spirit left in some of us that just want to stay a little off the grid. I think
there is indeed, Tom. But I'm just going to counter that with the fact that there's nothing sexy about drinking a drink that was made in a fucking cowshed
or down a toilet. Grant.
No.
I get you. Maybe I'm getting carried away with Steve Earle's fucking Copperhead Road and all the rest of it. Like, you know, rebel little man. I get it, but I think that might be it. I think it's the allure of the boldness of it, and to be able to tell the story that I drank poitín. Really, did you get it in fucking fine wines? Did you? I did.
Yeah.
Not cool. I got it from a one-eyed guy from Monaghan. Way cooler story. Did I drink it? Did I? Fuck. I literally let my tongue touch it and went, well, I gave it to a guy for rubbing it. He rubbed it into his greyhound dog's legs.
Yeah, that's poitín. If you have poitín in the house, don't drink it. We said this in the podcast before. Don't drink it. Rub it onto your sore legs, or mash it up into meal and feed it to sick cows.
There you go.
Well, look, regardless of what it is, whether your tipple of the choice this evening is legal or illegal, Tom, I am going to raise a glass to our listeners and say thank you very much for tuning in to another lengthy episode of the Tom and Gerry Show, where hopefully we have scared you off the drink for life. But we hope we have not scared you off listening to this podcast. If you want to listen to more of it, Tom, what should these fine people do?
Whatever you're listening to on right now, just scroll down. You go, that wasn't a bad podcast. I like that. Have a gander. There's a subscribe button. If I can say it correctly, there's a subscribe button there. Hit subscribe. Have an old look-see back. There's 5 more seasons before this, where we basically build to the crescendo that has been season 6 so far. Of course, if you're just going, I just tuned in for the booze, trust me, the same vibe is happening with the last 3 episodes of season 6. The same vibes are still happening.
We have carried across the same haphazard approach to accuracy.
Oh yeah, but you know what, Jer? Like I've said with our chat with our guest the other day, I think people feel comfort in not listening to 2 people that are overly professional. I like that. We're attainable. Jared, that's what we are. Our ability is attainable. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to listen to Cristiano Ronaldo and fucking Lionel Messi of podcasting here. They want 2 guys who are possibly they're thinking, I might give that a go. I'm not saying you'll be any good at it or any better than us. Who knows? But aside from hitting subscribe.
Yes. With that being said,
you can follow us on all the usual platforms, i.e. Twitter and Instagram. All the rest of them are for your nana or for your child.
Yeah.
Follow us on either one at Tom and Gerry Show. We'll be easily found off either side of that. But look, why not follow us as a duo? It's where the best stuff happens. We will continue to be putting up, because Jerry's has full control of that. And he's very, very good on the socials. He will be putting up all sorts of updates.
Doing my best.
And as well as that, interactive bits where we'd like you to jump on board going, I like this, I like that. We got some people talking about, I have a group of people that actually want to actually host their own thing to talk about final meals the other day. So they want to host their own. So it's cool. And they want to come to us then with their final meal. So I love that. So continue, please, to interact.
Nothing I won't do for €100, Tom.
I went a bit strong, Jerry. You're a nicer man than I am, as well as that. As well as hitting subscribe. Follow us on the social platforms, easy for me to say. And we would like you to rate. Now, you can only do it in 1 or 2 platforms. I think it's Acast and Apple Podcasts. But do give us the 5 stars. It helps other people find it. And if you want to leave us a review, fantastic. Freest thing you could possibly do is just take a screen grab and put it on your socials. Say the boys are doing a fucking great job. Have a listen. Maybe put our link up. Share it with your friends and family. Let more people find out about the Tom and Gerry Show. Other than that, Jared, I don't know what else to say to him. Let's get drunk, huh?
Other than that, yeah, let's get drunk. But like, not for nothing. This isn't. This has been a long podcast, but it's not all you're going to hear of us this week. We've got another fantastic guest on Thursday for our bonus worst gig ever episodes, which is fucking coming at you from all angles, Tom. I don't know what to say. All right, do you wanna head down Copperhead Road there, buddy?
I do. We just sit into our old sprayed up, fucking beating up the oak. That's actually just another piece of nugget of information, as we do on the run from the fucking cops. That's how NASCAR started. From lads coming back from the Second World War with an ability to soup up cars because they've been souping up airplanes. They started souping up cars and running moonshine, figuring that these boys, when they weren't running moonshine, had a couple of very fast cars, decided to race each other around fields. Hence was the birth of NASCAR. I really need to kill some brain cells right now, Jared. I will accept nothing sub 70
to a later episode of Tom and Jerry. All right, buddy, I'll raise this tub of isopropyl alcohol to you and we'll tip on.
Good luck.